Texas, California. But we're also seeing an interesting, what I call post-COVID syndrome in patients and healthcare workers that I see in my practice.
What is that? Meaning what? Yeah.
Well, I think COVID-19 has really affected people, and I mean both patients and the healthcare workers, both physically and emotionally. I think there really is a PTSD element that is not just emotional by any means. Certainly the patients have residual physical symptoms, more so in the hospitalized patients and people who've made it out of the ICUs. But even the patients who've had relatively mild cases, and these are some colleagues and friends as well as patients, I think it's changed them. From the healthcare worker point of view, I think this is the first time in a long time that the doctors and nurses, healthcare workers have felt, vulnerable. With PPEs, are they adequately protected? It's hard enough to take care of patients, no less the patient being a risk to you. And I think we have to go back maybe to HIV or even before where the healthcare worker was really under that degree of stress. And I think that has stayed with him, and it still is there every time you put on a mask before you see a patient, every time you put on a face shield or a gown. You always, the reason you're doing that is because that patient potentially can hurt you. So I think that's very traumatic, and I think also the lack of treatment or ineffective treatment has affected the healthcare worker. It's a very humbling experience to have people come in and you're used to offering state-of-the-art care. And we have studies and a variety of approaches, but really no cure. And so I think that's been certainly traumatic for doctor and patient. And the patients are coming into the office with a variety of symptoms as well, both physical and psychologic. More anxiety. A lot of patients have chronic fatigue. We're not really exactly sure, what that's about. We know the virus affects many organs, liver, kidney, brain, strokes, and so forth. Many of them have ongoing either chest pain or shortness of breath after the lung infection. We think some of that may be scarring. Many of them have abnormal labs, elevated liver function tests, clotting tests, kidney abnormalities, memory issues, or residual strokes. So I think we're really just learning to deal with and try and understand a lot of not only the symptoms but lab abnormalities after these patients have left the hospital or so-called, have recovered. So it's a lot of challenges, I think, that we are all still facing and not out of the woods yet.
Well, and I think it reminds us, and I feel like, Ian, you've said this to us many times, like we don't really totally still understand this virus, right? We're still in the thick of it. And, we're still learning about the impact, not just while you have it or while you're being treated for it, but afterwards, longer term. And I'm curious about the impact on patients. Is it older patients, all kinds of patients?
There's no question that it follows the statistics that older patients, older men certainly, but we see women as well, and a few young people as well who have survived. They have really sort of a near-death experience, and although they're grateful, I think they're also they're changed. It's anxiety provoking. Not to mention when they speak to the doctors and say, what's my prognosis or why are my liver tests elevated? We have to say, well, we're really following this because it's a new entity in many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's probably a little bit scary for someone to hear from their doctor, I really don't know. And that's certainly not something we're used to hearing, especially given the quality of care that we're used to in a place like New York City.
I also think, you think about, especially as the world reopens, you don't want to get the virus for virus' sake, but if you also understand that there is maybe longer-term implications on your physical health, Dr. Lustbader, it's got to make you think twice about kind of getting back into normal society.
Correct. We do think, for example, patients who have high antibody levels certainly should be protected. And I think what we're seeing now in some of the southern states, not to point fingers necessarily, or the country in general, I think people are lowering their guard. It's summer, people want out. They are not necessarily following distancing guidelines and masks and so forth, because that's a pain. And I think we need to talk about and adjust to a new normal until really we get better treatment and vaccine that is effective. We know over 100 companies are working on vaccines. We really don't have any results yet as to how effective they are and how long those antibodies will last, assuming that we get neutralizing antibodies. So there's still a lot of questions.
Right.
And I think people need to be aware of that.
All right. So, Ian, Dr. Ian Lustbader, hang with us for a few minutes. We're going to continue this conversation after we do some news. A lot to talk about, especially as we're in the midst of reopening New York City. Also want to hear some practical advice, as he always gives us, as we go through the weekend. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are heading toward the weekend with a whimper, unable to maintain a strong early recovery from yesterday's rout. Prices are mixed to lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 6. The S&P 500 down 11. The Nasdaq is down 62. The Fed says it will use its full range of tools to pull the U.S. out of its COVID-19 recession. In a semi-annual report to Congress, the Fed said the pandemic caused tremendous hardship. It signaled that it would keep interest rates low through 2022. Even as America reopens from its pandemic lockdowns, most people remain cautious. A new poll finds most people are wearing masks, avoiding crowds in large restaurants, and postponing social activities. The government plans to hand out 96 million cloth face masks to people riding planes, trains, and mass transit. Most will go to airports as officials look to increase public confidence as the economy reopens. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
COVID-19. Can the world reopen for business?
Give us a sense of how you're ramping up and taking care of folks on the ground.
What's the long-term impact?
Why will we not see a V-shaped recovery?
When will there be a cure or a vaccine?
How can you model that at a time when it's unclear whether we're going to see a resurgence in viruses?
The answers will emerge.
Can you give us a sense of timing?
And you'll find them here. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. In-depth analysis.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area? Discover local news, talk, and music stations. Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
As the science and medical world continues to learn more about COVID-19, we're all learning how to best live with it. Because the news is always changing, TuneIn helps you make sure you're getting the latest information on the pandemic with live streams of CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and more. Plus, evidence-driven podcasts like Coronavirus, Fact versus Fiction, and Podcast 19. For the latest stories and reports, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
This is Mike Golick from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Trey Wingo, my son, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Ian Lustbader, talk about New York reopening and what you need to be thinking about as all of that happens.
Yep, we all play a role, no doubt about it. All right, let's get back to your top business stories and another check on that sell-off. Let's get back to Charlie Pellet. Was a rally and then a big pullback.
Yeah, indeed, and it's a great reason to keep it locked into Bloomberg Radio right through the closing bell on this Friday, because right now I've got green on the screen with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ. They have all turned around. Yes, mixed to lower. Last update, right now the S&P up 14 at 3,017. That is a gain of 0.5%. The Dow up 245, up by 1%. NASDAQ up 22 points, higher by 0.2%. A volatile Friday. We've got the 10-year yield 0.69%, down 630 seconds. Gold up 0.2%, 17.31 the ounce, and the Dow up by the price of oil, West Texas Intermediate crude up by about 0.1% right now, 36.40 for a barrel of WTI. Bottom line here, S&P fluctuating as the World Health Organization says the risk of a second wave is present for any country exiting lockdowns. That's been a major area of concern, specifically in yesterday's sell-off. Dr. Andrew Pekosh is a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
The most critical thing when loosening these public health interventions is to make sure that testing and contact tracing capabilities are at a very high level, because you don't just want to release the public health interventions, you also want to have in place ways to identify and track the cases that are going to occur.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Cruise operators and airlines were among the hardest hit during yesterday's rout, are bouncing back today. Right now, for instance, Carnival is up by 11.4% among the cruise names. Royal Caribbean up 9.3%. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings up by 14.4%. Bottom line, stocks rebounding with the S&P up 18, a gain of 0.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Our guest at this hour is Dr. Ian Lustbader, Clinical Associate Professor of Medicine at NYU Langone Medical Center, once again on the phone in New York City. Hey, Ian, one thing I wanted to follow up on, you said we need to adjust to the new normal. What is the new normal? Because I know you have been among those who said, we do ultimately have to get back to work, right? Necessary surgery and treatments are not happening as everybody stays home. But I do wonder, as you watch what seems to be cases spiking in other states, is, how do we embrace a new normal? And are we seeing evidence that maybe it's too soon in terms of some of the reopenings?
I think that's a great question, Carol, as always, and Jason as well. Always great to have, this focused interest. So I think we're definitely seeing a spike in cases. We don't really know the details specifically of why in Florida, Texas, Arizona. There may be different guidelines. People may not be following it as closely. I must say in New York, the streets were empty for months. People stayed inside. They suffered some psychological trauma due to that, but everyone really followed the social isolation, and unfortunately that's what needs to happen until cases really drop and cases are rising. So I think there's some principles as to the new normal. One thing would be, outside versus inside. A number of patients say they'd like to get together with family who they haven't seen for a while. Is it safe? And nothing is completely safe, but certainly sitting outside, having 10 feet of distance, would make a lot of sense. Try to avoid inside meetings, even in the same family, but that's obviously harder to do. Avoid areas of, sort of loud speaking or singing choirs. There was that report of many people being infected from the choir, shouting, ball fields, which are obviously still closed. So, speak in moderate voice, and really masks would be very important. Ideally N95 masks, which are unfortunately hard to get prior to the crisis. They were easily available. Those really are the best. Masks with a tighter seal or surgical masks, have some openings. You could certainly tape that. I think that's a little less critical if you're outside, but certainly if you're visiting with friends or people you don't know. Even a cloth or silk mask that has a few layers would be helpful. Some people say a face shield, and you can get these on the internet, a plastic face shield, or you can even make them, this sort of clear plastic.
So, Ian, as we all go back to work, and it feels like we heard Goldman Sachs talk about bringing back workers soon, the Wall Street community. When we're in offices, obviously we have to do social distancing. What kind of masks are the smart things for us to be wearing? It sounds like we need to have masks that are, maybe more contained than a cloth mask.
Ideally, yeah. So the surgical masks and the cloth masks, as we've said, have openings in them. The surgical masks have openings as well. N95s are really the best. But even in our medical office, our big medical group, all the doctors, all the patients are wearing masks. You're talking to people through the masks. Basically, unless someone is in their own office eating or drinking, people wear masks. And I think, the days of people screaming at each other in the hallways or in a busy open cubicle will really have to be moderated. Shouting and aerosolizing potential virus particles are not a great idea. But you can communicate.
That's bad news for Wall Street traders. I'm just going to say they're a big part of our audience, Ian, and that is not good news for them to hear.
Well, I would say if you're going to shout or if you're going to be doing that, I think masks would reduce the amount of droplets. So, and that's really all you can do is reduce risk. You cannot eliminate risk. Yeah. And I think people just need to be mindful of ways to reduce risk.
So what do you...
Which, as we said, masks and so forth.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but one of the things that's been going around a big time, certainly in our universe and on Twitter, is about Larry Kudlow of the Trump administration declaring that a second wave of the virus has not descended upon the U.S. and says there's no emergency, there is no second wave. And he goes on. I just got about 40 seconds here. Does that help or hurt?
Define it. Well, I think we're still seeing the first wave. I don't think we've gone through the first wave. Typically, we think of a second wave as reinfections, for example, in New York City where the cases dropped if they begin to rise again. But I'm not sure it's a critical definition. The bottom line is we haven't vanquished the virus. Yeah. We don't have a vaccine and we don't have effective treatment. or prevention, prophylactic medicine like hydroxychloroquine. So I think it's semantics, and I think we have farther to go. We're inching up on that, and we have to be careful whether we define it as the first wave or second wave.
Right.
There may be other waves if the virus mutates, and so I think we do need to alter behavior. That's really the challenge for people.
I have to say, Jason and I always have a conversation with you, and you were like, we can't believe how much ground we covered. So thank you so much, because it was all the things that we were hoping to do. Ian, have a great and safe weekend. Dr. Ian Lustbader, Clinical Associate Professor of Medicine at NYU Langone Medical Center, on the phone in New York City. It was like, I checked off all my lists.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, when you were able to check off your list, that's a happy Carol Massar.
I'm pulling out the Post-its.
Oh, boy. Post-its coming down. Let's head down to the nation's capital now. Nancy Lyons has an update on the news. Hey.
Hey, Jason. Public health experts say significant parts of the country are repeating the mistakes of March with lax rules on businesses. And the coronavirus is surging as a result. Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro reports.
Texas was one of the first states to reopen. Now, just weeks later, Houston area officials are getting close to reimposing stay-at-home orders. And they're preparing to use a special COVID-19 hospital established at a football stadium because the virus is spreading so quickly. Dr. Ashish Jha, the Harvard Institute, says many experts warned this could happen.
We opened up when the case levels were still quite high. So we're now seeing the consequences of that.
The Carolinas are reporting record case numbers. Florida is reporting a troubling uptick too, and Oregon is pausing efforts to reopen the state's economy for a week. Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
The use of controversial no-knock warrants has been banned in Louisville, Kentucky, the city where Breonna Taylor was fatally shot after officers burst into her home. The city's Metro Council unanimously voted last night to ban the controversial warrants just days after protests and calls for reform. Taylor was shot 8 times by officers conducting a narcotics investigation. No drugs were ever found. There are renewed concerns China may be extending its censorship globally. Zoom says it deactivated accounts of pro-democracy Chinese activists that were based in the U.S. at the request of Beijing. It followed 4 video calls that were publicized on social media to commemorate Tiananmen Square protests. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
The best of Bloomberg.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races. Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night, and there's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, race to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to stand out stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Remember, 6 feet. It's the rule. Stay your distance and always wear a mask while you're out. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
Where do sports, culture, and basketball nostalgia collide? On their podcast, Knuckleheads, NBA veterans Quentin Richardson and Darius Miles sit down with athletes, musicians, and entertainers to get brutally honest, totally unguarded conversations about everything, from current events to untold stories from the golden era of sports.
Neil. You know that, right? I tried to tip dunk all the free throw line one time.
Search Knuckleheads on TuneIn to listen.
Ready for some straight talk on what's happening in the MLB? On the Barstool Sports Podcast starting 9, Dallas Braden and Jared Carrabis cut through the BS to break down the league the way they really see it.
Yeah, we're continuing our little mini-series of college baseball coaches in addition to bringing you major league players from throughout the league. If you've been listening to Starting 9 for some time now, you know that we've had a big leaguer on every single episode for probably 2 years now.
Search Starting 9 on TuneIn to listen.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. California is said to be examining Amazon's business practices, this according to Dow Jones, which says Amazon's tactics toward third-party sellers are being reviewed. Right now, Amazon is down by about 1.3%. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, what a day of volatile session. They're all higher right now with the S&P up 12. That is a gain of 0.4%. The Dow up 208 points now, up by 0.8%. And this Friday, NASDAQ up 15. That is a gain of 0.2%. 10 years down 6/32 with a yield of 0.68%. Gold up 0.2%. 17.31 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.1%, down 5 cents a barrel, 36.29. It is the first day of trading for the AZEK company. AZEK shares, they're up by 20%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, one of the stories you have to read, or this weekend you can actually listen to, it is in the magazine this week, and you won't be able to put it down, or you won't be able to take your AirPods out. It's all about a cruise ship, and the headline says it all: life and death on the Zaandam, Holland America's pariah ship. Michael Smith, he was one of the writers on it, projects and investigations reporter for Bloomberg Business Week. He joins us on the phone from Miami. Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week, he joins us from Brooklyn. Joel, this was one of these stories that you flagged to us early on. We love getting an inside look from, the guy in charge. And you sold this one very well, and you didn't even need to sell it, because once you're into it, you cannot get out in many ways. Set it up for us.
So the big story here is obviously that once the pandemic hit, there were a few places in the world that were uniquely exposed, and the cruise industry was one of them. And Business Week did a cover story about Carnival specifically a couple months ago. But one of the stories that also emerged and that Mike and a couple other reporters worked on was the story about Holland America, which is actually a subsidiary of Carnival, which had a ship that was leaving basically from Buenos Aires and was going to do like a multi-week tour around South America. And it basically pulled out of harbor right as the CDC was escalating its sort of rhetoric about how Americans specifically should not get on cruise ships. And it basically, the virus hit the ship after it had already basically left, and dozens of people got sick. At least 3 died. And Mike and Drake Bennett and Juan, who was another writer on this story, has spent basically weeks talking to passengers and crew members who basically were on what really was like the most miserable journey imaginable. And Mike, I'll turn it over to you. What did you guys discover in your reporting process on this one?
One thing we discovered is that how quickly and ferociously this virus, COVID-19, can spread and sort of thrive in a cruise ship environment. And we've seen repeated examples of that. And this one was really striking, if you will, in just how the disease spread so quickly, and perhaps more importantly, how seemingly unprepared the cruise line appeared to be in reacting to it, despite having had the experience of going through two major, the two other really well-known sort of COVID epidemics on ships involving 2 Princess brand ships, which are also the same cruise line, Holland America and Carnival. So those were like the most striking things that we discovered in our reporting.
And what's interesting, Mike, is that this is an industry, that understands how any kind of virus can quickly go through the ship, right? I mean, they've got little pieces of paper so that when you leave the bathroom, you can use that to open up the door. Like there's stuff all over the place. So that's just kind of normal operations. And so it is kind of interesting that in a world that was fighting a pandemic, and maybe while it wasn't right in front of them, they saw it all around them, that there wasn't more precautionary steps taken earlier.
Yeah, that's correct. The cruise industry, especially in the last decade or so, has had, made enormous inroads in fighting the most common illnesses to spread on cruise ships, which is gastrointestinal viruses, more specifically the norovirus it's called. And they've learned how to sort of react to and try to contain outbreaks of that virus. But the difference here is that norovirus almost never kills you. It's something that you get sick for a few days, but if you stay away from people, you're not going to spread it. Right. And that's the end of it. But they just weren't ready, and still aren't ready, it appears, to deal with a deadly virus like this that thrives, especially among the population that you see on many, many cruise ships, which are elderly people, many of whom already have other medical issues that that this virus really...
Perfect segue there, Mike, for my question, which is, I think the big feat here for folks who are going to be reading this or listening to it over the weekend is like we basically put you on the ship and you get a sense of what it's like to be a passenger. Mike, who were some of the characters that really stuck with you in your reporting?
Yeah, it's really striking to actually talk to the people who lived through this, passengers and people who worked on the ship, which is just as dramatic. And you just get the sense that everything was normal, typical cruise, what you would expect on a cruise, and then it wasn't, and it went from being just pretending to be like everything's normal. People are coughing here and there. And then all of a sudden, you're stuck in your cabin for a couple of weeks, and you have this just fear of this virus closing in on you and coming to get you, even inside your little room with a sealed window looking out at the beautiful Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. So, talking to people, and the people I talk to, they're just sort of normal, people that... This was like the cruise of a lifetime because it was a more sort of higher-end cruise, a longer cruise, very, very exotic, going to really, really beautiful parts of the world, seeing things that most people will never see. They got on that ship thinking they were basically checking off the biggest thing on their bucket list, and everything seemed to go well, and then it didn't, and it just became more and more desperate as ports refused to let them dock. And then, this thing just sort of got out of hand in many, many ways. And so when you talk to the victims, if you will, the people who were stuck in their cabins and many of whom got sick and died, it's just heartbreaking to hear the tremendous psychosis that sort of spread across the ship that was really, really, really real, and we're talking about life and death. Yeah. And there was no escape. That's kind of the main thing, no escape.
Well, that's the thing, right? To repeatedly being saying you can't dock here, you can't dock here, and you can't get off. You can't even get your head around that.
And even some of the examples too, and it's fairly high up in the story of, people who thought they were going to have a chance to get off and then weren't able to. That is really, it's difficult. It's a tough read in many ways, but you really need to read it to understand some of the contours of how this virus works. And also from an economic and a business perspective, what's going on in that industry. A terrific piece of reporting. Michael Smith, thank you so much. Really excellent work. Projects and investigations reporter for Bloomberg Business Week. Check out that story. It's in the magazine. You can also listen to it on our podcast feed this weekend. Michael joined us from Miami. Joel Weber, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week, joined us from Brooklyn.
It's a great read, a riveting read. Now, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco and watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues. If you're listening on Bloomberg 1061 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. Coming up next on Bloomberg Business Week, we're going to check in on the economic outlook, and we'll also dig a little bit deeper into home health care, someone who's been on the front lines of that. We'll talk and catch up with the CEO of CareAcademy.com right here on Bloomberg.
At the start of every day, you can't predict exactly how it'll end.
How much has demand ramped up for it?
Better information helps.
This is largely about survival in many ways.
Bloomberg Business Week, weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio.
With the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm John Tucker, brought to you by Dell Small Business. Small retailers enjoyed at least one advantage over online sellers: an in-store personalized touch. It's what set Jersey Shore gift shop Bungalow Road apart. Bridget Duffy is one of the owners there.
We gift wrap everything. We know a lot of the customers, and we also know the people that they're shopping for. So it's really like more of an experience.
But with the pandemic, small businesses have had to rethink online selling. At M. Flynn Jewelry in Boston South End, Megan Flynn and her sister have been specializing in custom jewelry for over 10 years. They've been operating with curbside pickup and contactless sales during the pandemic.
We've really had to change our business and pivot it and really focus on web.
And the challenge now is how to sell custom, how to keep the personal touch, the in-store experience when the retail world has been turned on its head. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
Debbie Hart is president of BioNJ, which represents the interests of more than 400 New Jersey-based biotech companies. She's also a strong voice in the biotech sector, supporting research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology. She sees NJIT as a valuable partner in attracting venture capital and biotech startups to the Garden State.
So the number one reason that companies come here to New Jersey for the biotech industry is for our talent. We estimate that there were about 30 biotech companies in the early 90s in New Jersey, about 80 in 1998. Today there are more than 400. And that growth continues, and it's come from every possible angle. Other countries, other states, they've spun out of our academic institutions as well as our biotech and our pharma companies, and we expect that growth to continue long into the future. And NJIT is a pipeline for talent, for companies, for entrepreneurs to do that important work.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Business and finance have always held surprises, but this is brand new.
The move risks fueling more demonstrations, and Stokes' concern that essential freedoms will be curbed.
Karen Muskow and Nathan Hager.
Chinese lawmakers approved national security legislation.
Expert navigation through uncharted territory.
Tell us the range of outcomes that we could see on that front.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Friday, June 12th. Stocks higher across the board. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all rebounding. It has been an extremely volatile session. Right now, the S&P up 16, up 0.5%. The Dow is advancing 241 points, up 1%. NASDAQ up 27. That is a gain of 0.3%. Stocks rebounding from the biggest rout in 12 weeks as dip buyers emerged for companies that bore the brunt of yesterday's selling. Right now, again, the S&P is up 20, higher by about 0.7%. As for the broader global economic backdrop, Mohammed El-Arian is Chief Economic Advisor at Allianz, the parent of PIMCO. He's also a Bloomberg opinion columnist and was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
We are going to see a process of deglobalization that is driven by households, governments, and the corporate sector. And the result of that, absent, and I want to stress, there's nothing predestined, depends on policies, but absent policies to improve productivity will be lower productivity and lower growth. And that's what you hear from the IMF, you heard it from the OECD, you heard it from the World Bank.
Gold is up 0.3%, $1732.09 the ounce, up by about $4.50. West Texas Intermediate crude up 7 cents, $36.41 for a barrel of WTI. That is an advance now of about 0.3%. After earnings, Adobe is higher. The software company trading at a record after reporting second quarter results that beat expectations. Adobe up 5.2%. Lululemon reported earnings last night. It's heading in the other direction. Lululemon Athletica down now by 5.3%. Facebook's purchase of Giphy will be probed by the UK's competition watchdog as regulators around the world express concerns that the acquisition will give the internet giant too much information on its rival's operation. Facebook shares, they're up today, higher by about 1.1%. So again, recapping, we've got stocks rallying with the S&P up 23, up 0.8%, the Dow up 293, up 1.2%, NASDAQ up 47. That is a gain of 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics, let you know what you need to know going into the weekend, because this was a week where certainly economics were weighing pretty heavily on the market. Certainly those comments from Chair Powell caught a lot of attention, and he's not done yet, Carol. We're going to hear more from him next week.
And there's an interesting story on the Bloomberg, from the Bloomberg economics team, that basically is looking at the real signal stocks are sending an economy. And it's interesting. It just talks about some of the dispersions that we're seeing of recent returns, and says in past downturns some signals of where, reallocation of profits between firms. It looks like that's what the market is pointing to. That has often been a sign of the beginning of a painful restructuring, and that means jobless workers left kind of in limbo as the landscape shifts around them. So let's bring in Yelena Shaletyeva. She's our senior U.S. economist at Bloomberg Economics on the phone from Long Island. And I do wonder, Yelena, this is from your team. You guys are looking at kind of what will be that labor market landscape and, you know, what kind of economy we come back to and how it shifts as a result of what we've just gone from and what that means ultimately for workers. And there can be a disconnect, correct?
Absolutely. I think the markets are being too optimistic about the labor market prospects and the economy in general. I think what we will see going forward is only a gradual improvement in terms of the unemployment rate and in terms of jobs growth. So I think there's a lot of different signals coming from the data at this point. Obviously, we had a better than expected May jobs report, but at the same time, jobless claims are not going down as quickly as the payrolls numbers would have suggested. Right. So I think, you know, another thing to look at is the FOMC projections. So we did see the FOMC releasing some economic forecasts this week, and they are looking for a painfully prolonged recovery in terms of GDP. They're not getting back to the pre-crisis levels in their forecasts until sometime in 2022, and it would take even longer for the unemployment rate to get back to the levels we last saw before the virus crisis. I think that's very important to keep in mind that there are a lot of structural shifts in the economy, and not everybody is going back to their previous jobs.
Well, where are you most nervous when you talk about the shifts? Is it the things that we've been talking about in terms of education, medicine? Like, what is it? Or is it just a case of a weak economy? What are those shifts that you're thinking of?
So I think the jobs that were hit hardest, you know, in the leisure and hospitality, in restaurant businesses, not all of them are coming back. Even if the restaurants reopen, even if services such as hairdressers and, you know, manicurists, salons reopen, there will be some sort of a social distancing requirement to that. So you will not be able to do as many manicures as you possibly
you can't pack them in, right? You can't pack.
Right.
Jason,
so Carol gets hers, I don't get mine,
Jason,
or maybe vice versa.
But you went to a restaurant.
Oh, Jason, you have no idea. So
but I do, Yelena.
But he does. Oh, he does, Yelena.
Okay, so I think. Well, but seriously speaking, this is not as optimistic. So there's a lot of things that may have to change, given the what we saw during the crisis, given how we are going to get back in that sense. So I think there's still a lot of jobs at risk. And these jobs may be even in adjacent industries to those that were hit hardest. And that means, you know, again, the overall picture may not be as rosy as the stock market is depicting.
So, Yelena, Fed Chair Powell, he is going to be testifying before the House next Tuesday and Wednesday, the House and the Senate next Tuesday and Wednesday. I wonder, put yourself in the shoes of a staffer or a member of Congress who's going to be asking a question. Having heard what he said this week, what's the main thing you want to hear from him?
So the Senate first on Tuesday, the House on Wednesday, and the chair will face a lot of questions about whether the lawmakers need to extend the fiscal package. So he will have to really walk a very fine line in terms of saying, okay, the crisis is not the time for fiscal austerity. At the same time, he should stay away from exact policy prescriptions. But what I would like to hear from the chair is how they are going to change how they are going to tailor different lending facilities to help the companies of different sizes, small and large, going forward, because there has not been that much demand for these services. And maybe this is a good thing. After all, that means that the bank system is working properly and things are running smoothly in the market. But in terms of how to help the recovery going forward, that's probably something that I would like to learn.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, we will certainly be, yeah, exactly, right, and covering it and talking about it. Yelena, have a great weekend. Yelena Shaletyeva, she's our senior U.S. economist at Bloomberg Economics, joining us on the phone from Long Island. I mean, I don't know, Jason. I still, like I said to you, we live in these 2-week increments, and I guess let's see what happens over the next week or so. Does the administration have it right? Are we recovering? What does Powell say? I mean, Powell was very cautionary, safe to say, this week on that Fed meeting and that press conference.
Well, and certainly the market reacted in kind yesterday. And, it's interesting, though, to watch the market now. We're looking at an S&P and a Dow that are up better than 1%, NASDAQ up just a touch lower than that, but all in the green. So we'll keep an eye on that. We're also going to talk a little bit more about the medical crisis. We're also later on going to hear from the president of Ithaca College. Looking forward to that. So all of these things are intertwined into the economy and the markets. That's
and we're
for
going
sure.
to talk a little bit about hospitality. I mean, I am thinking about a summer. I feel like everybody needs a bit of a break right now. All right, let's get back to World and National News headlines. She's very busy. Nancy Lyons in our D.C. studio. Hey, Nance.
Hey, Carol. The reopening process continues across the country, even as coronavirus infection rates increase in at least 20 states and Puerto Rico. Experts warn a new wave of the pandemic is coming. Harvard Dr. Ashish Jha says the U.S. death toll could reach 200,000 by September.
If we don't act, the future is very grim. There'll be a lot of people who are going to get very, very sick. Many people will die.
President Trump is moving ahead with his campaign rallies, despite the recent surge in coronavirus cases. People attending next week's rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, though, will have to agree not to sue the Trump campaign if they do contract the virus. He says that rally will be a celebration. Well, the president spoke with Fox today and addressed the need for police reform, but he offered no specifics.
It could be local level, and in some cases it will be local level, but I think we can certainly make recommendations, and they can be very strong recommendations.
New York is already taking action. Governor Andrew Cuomo signed a 10-bill package of criminal justice and police reform into law today and spoke before signing the package about George Floyd, Eric Garner, and other men and women of color who've been killed in police custody.
The New York State Legislature has quickly passed the most aggressive reforms in the nation. I'm going to sign those bills in a moment. 58 reforms, so there's transparency. We're banning chokeholds.
Cities and communities have until April to take action or lose state funding. The Oscars are implementing some big changes, including having a set number of Best Picture nominees, 10, with new inclusion standards for eligibility. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists.
With perspective comes clarity.
Each week, the story seems to change.
The best experts bring you the most clarity.
Give us a sense of what's going on in the IPO market these days.
Vonnie Quinn.
Will there be an interest from LPs in newer managers here?
Paul Sweeney.
How are companies marketing their deals here in the time of COVID and social distancing?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. On days when it seems there are nothing but questions.
What about the pandemic emergency purchase program in Europe?
What's the medical side of this?
We try to ask good ones.
How long until we have an answer on what drugs can help us fight this pandemic?
How do you think this has the potential to rattle markets?
Does that mean we should shut down?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
There's a rather controversial question being asked.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
If knowledge is power,
where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
There's a reason flash storage is called flash storage and not electronic non-volatile computer memory storage. From quick and efficient data retrieval to instant scalability, everything about IBM flash storage is fast. It's also cloud-ready and surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £310 for 24 terabytes of all flash. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Find out more at ibm.biz/flash offer.
If you have to drive, then it's more important than ever to watch your speed. As London starts to reopen, there are going to be more people on our streets. There'll be more people cycling, more people walking to work or to the shops. If you must drive, avoid the morning and evening peaks when the roads will be busier. We want the streets to be safe for everyone, all the time. So watch your speed. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Get your cook on with Asda, with Uncle Ben's rice 250 grams for just £1, and our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, pass to the 5, touchdown!
Search classic game replays to listen for free.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying to
standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Ready to talk brass tacks on what's happening in Major League Baseball? Turn to the Effectively Wild podcast from Fangraphs for daily statistics, analysis, and commentary.
One team will say, yeah, we're going to keep paying minor leaguers their stipend, and another team will say, we're going to extend the stipend through this month, and then another team will say, nope, we're cutting them off. So are extending it at least through August, which would basically be the end of the minor league regular season.
Search Effectively Wild on TuneIn to listen.
at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 43 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell, with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all rebounding from the biggest rout in 12 weeks as dip buyers emerge for companies that bore the brunt of yesterday's selling. Airlines, cruise lines among the names bouncing back, banks as well. We've got the S&P up 22 points right now. That is a gain of about 0.8%. The Dow up 324 points, up by 1.3%. NASDAQ up 47, higher by 0.5%. 10 years down 10/30 seconds, yield 0.70% this Friday. Gold up 0.3%, 17.32 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude now up by 0.5%, 36.54 a barrel. First day of trading for the AZEK company. Its shares moving higher by 20%, 27.65 on AZEK. Hertz shares surging 37%. Hertz Global Holdings, whose stock appears destined to be wiped out when its bankruptcy case is finished, wants to sell $1 billion more of its shares, even though it readily concedes those might wind up worthless too. Investors, though, bidding shares up again. Hertz jumping by 37%. Recapping equities higher. S&P up 19, a gain of 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, we've been talking a lot, and we need to keep talking about the most vulnerable in our population, and certainly among the most vulnerable when it comes to the effect of the virus are the elderly. And one of the companies that's doing a lot of work on that front is Care Academy. And we are delighted to have the co-founder and the CEO of Care Academy, Helen Adioson. She joins us on the phone from Boston. Helen, really nice to have you with us.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's good to have you in part because you and your company are working in such a critical area of healthcare right now. We understand that healthcare has been so radically disrupted by the virus, and would love to understand what you're seeing and what your company is doing, and maybe how it has shifted or seen its business change in light of all of this.
Absolutely. This is absolutely a critical time for our whole country, us as a nation, and at Care Academy, I often say that we were not pivoting because of COVID. We were leaning into COVID. Pre-COVID, we, as you mentioned at the very top, we were already seeing a large increase of older adults. So, knowing that there's going to be 703 million older adults in 2020 and 1.5 billion older adults by 2050, with the expectation of aging in place. And so what COVID did is it exacerbated a lot of the healthcare trends that we believe we were going to see in 3 to 5 years, and now that is happening. So we are actually seeing across all of our customers that we serve and their direct care workers, what's happening is a greater expectation of people who are going home to recover from COVID, are recovering already from COVID without a discharge. But there's just a huge jump in the number of COVID cases, especially among older adults, that are happening in the home. And I think for the American consumer, folks are starting to sort of question elder care in the long-term care industry and how it can better position to the home care setting because of COVID. So we actually, as a company, we provide online professional development and upskilling. So really educational supports for the essential workers right now, the direct care workers who are healthcare workers. And within just a relatively short amount of time, we saw 88,000 views of our COVID-related class that is, still available on our website for anyone aside from our customers. So we just saw just a huge increase in demand for folks who wanted to get education and certification around COVID-19. Mm-hmm.
So, Helen, your platform provides that ongoing education for caregivers, and you also support those who own home care companies and agencies. And I'm just curious, coming off the last 13 weeks, coming off the last 3 weeks, has really exposed the inequalities in our society, especially when it comes to things like certainly race and certainly health care. And I do wonder, having had two parents that we had to pull in at some point, home health care. It's not inexpensive. Mm-hmm. And I do wonder, how you think about that and providing what's going to be really probably a necessary component for all of us because we're living longer, right? And getting ailments that require some kind of assistance usually. How do you address that?
That is a great and I think a fundamental question for our country as we move forward. I was listening as you were talking to Elena earlier. I think by virtue of this very moment, things will be impacted forever. We are already seeing CMS, or the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, making some very necessary changes to our healthcare infrastructure. And as part of that thinking, that broad view of how do we revision and remake healthcare for the needs of older adults and our needs moving forward, that is something that I think that we have to take into consideration. How do we think about reimbursement? Prior to COVID, we saw Medicare Advantage programs moving in to provide long-term care supports in the home as far as private pay. I think systemically we have to look at how we reimburse for home opportunities as well as payment considerations and how we make home care a place and a prime destination for folks who are entering into healthcare work. Those are the two things that I think our country has to think about moving forward.
Helen, I just got to ask you, as a follow to that, very briefly, we only have, unfortunately, about 45 seconds left, but, what's the thing of this crisis that really sticks in terms of how healthcare is delivered in your estimation?
Absolutely. We were already part of an ongoing trend pre-COVID, and now it is absolutely a non-negotiable that the future of healthcare really is in the home. Aside from the larger healthcare providers, we see retailers and everyone positioning. Now we need to build the infrastructure as a country, and our leadership has to really address now an exacerbation of this really critical moment for our country. So I think it was already going there, and now more than ever, we need to see healthcare as in the home as a primary feature of healthcare.
That's really it. Yeah, I mean, primary versus, that's a really, really interesting and important point. Helen Adioson, thank you so much, co-founder, CEO of Cure Academy, joining us on the phone from Boston. We should point out they just raised their Series A funding from some big investors. Mm-hmm. This is a really important area of healthcare, so I'm glad we were able, and the numbers that she described, Carol, and as you said, you lived this with your parents. It's vital to get this right as we go forward.
Absolutely, and those workers are really just...
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. It's a tug-of-war on Wall Street, pitting bargain hunting against fears of a resurgence of coronavirus infections. Stocks have spent time on both sides of break-even and are now mostly higher in the final hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 357, the S&P 500 up 27, the Nasdaq is up 64. Americans are feeling better about the economy as it recovers from the COVID-19 lockdown. The University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index is up this month by the most since 2016. AZEK, a maker of decking and outdoor furniture, is up 20% in its first day of trading. The company says it's poised to benefit as the pandemic drags on into summer and homeowners look to make staycation improvements. Airbnb has settled a lawsuit against New York City and will hand over personal data on its hosts. It could cost Airbnb tens of thousands of New York City listings. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
"Only you can prevent wildfires."
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. With COVID-19,
we're all having to get used to the new normal. And at Birkbeck University, we're experts at being adaptable. As London's evening university, we've been flexing around the lives of busy commuters for nearly 200 years. And you can find everything you need to secure your place for autumn online. From expert advice to virtual tours, a live chat with our students and course applications. Make the new normal, studying for the career that you really want. Search Birkbeck, and it's new problem solved.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up into Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick 6 podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick 6 on TuneIn to listen.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
As the science and medical world continues to learn more about COVID-19, we're all learning how to best live with it. Because the news is always changing, TuneIn helps you make sure you're getting the latest information on the pandemic with live streams of CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and more. Plus, evidence-driven podcasts like Coronavirus, Fact versus Fiction, and Podcast 19 for the latest stories and reports. Search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, Dave Wilson.
Yes.
He's got his chart of the day. He gave us a nice tease.
It was perfect.
About
this. It was like perfection.
Wow.
I don't know. I was trying to do like a
more of a kiss.
There, that's
more
good.
of a kiss.
Perfection.
More of a kiss, less of a pop. All right. Let's get to that. But first, we'll get to Charlie Pellett. He's got an update on this kind of wacky trade.
Indeed. Wacky anchors kissing on a Friday. I like that. Here's what's going on. We got 28 minutes to go before the bell with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ. Wacky indeed with the S&P up 9 right now. 3,011 up by 0.3%. The Dow up 201, higher by 0.8%. NASDAQ up 4 points. That is a gain of about 0.1%. We've got the 10-year down 9/30 seconds. The yield there 0.70%. Gold up 0.3%. 17.32 the ounce, and crude up 9 $1.09, up by about 0.3%, $36.43 a barrel. Facebook's purchase of Giphy will be probed by the UK's competition watchdog as regulators around the world express concerns that the acquisition will give the internet giant too much information on its rival's operation. The Turkish government is accusing Twitter of being, quote, a propaganda machine with political inclinations after the social network suspended thousands of accounts aligned with the country's ruling party. As for Twitter shares, they are trading a little change right now, up by less than 0.1%. And Dick's Sporting Goods is reinstating its dividend as it reopens stores. Dick says it expects to have nearly 100% of stores reopened by the end of June. Dick shares, they're up today by 7.8%. And now it is time for the Small Business Report with John Tucker.
Small retailers enjoyed at least one advantage over online sellers: an in-store personalized touch. It's what set Jersey Shore gift shop Bungalow Road apart. Bridget Duffy is one of the owners there.
We gift wrap everything. We know a lot of the customers, and we also know the people that they're shopping for. So it's really like more of an experience.
But with the pandemic, small businesses have had to rethink online selling. At M. Flynn Jewelry in Boston South End, Megan Flynn and her sister have been specializing in custom jewelry for over 10 years. They've been operating with curbside pickup and contactless sales during the pandemic.
We've really had to change our business and pivot it and really focus on web.
And the challenge now is how to sell custom, how to keep the personal touch, the in-store experience, when the retail world has been turned on its head. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
And we thank you, John Tucker. Arizona, Oklahoma are among U.S. states reporting record one-day increases in new coronavirus cases. Recapping equities higher, 25 minutes to go with the S&P up 12, a gain there of 0.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Down the decades every year, summer leaves and my birthday's here, and all my friends stand up and cheer and say, man, you old, getting old.
It's just so great. There were so many ways that he could go. Paul Simon. Yeah. That is inspired. Inspired, Dave Wilson. Nice job with this one. Tell us how it links to your chart.
It's all about being old, Jason. I mean, hey, we're all getting old, and so is the stuff we own, as I was saying earlier, particularly stuff that's supposed to last a long time, whether you talk about buildings or homes or appliances or those kinds of assets. And I bring this all up because, I was taking a look at the weekly Research Investment Committee report from Bank of America. And Jared Woodard, who's the head of that committee, focused on the potential for a pickup in capital spending once we get out from under the effects of the coronavirus. The way he characterized it in a report, buying back shares of your company just doesn't have the same appeal necessarily that it had before because there's been so much criticism of the practice. And, at some point, companies and also households are just going to need to replace stuff because it's getting older. And the way that you can track that is to look at a set of data compiled by the Commerce Department, specifically their Bureau of Economic Analysis, as far as the average age of U.S. assets. And then Bank of America picked up on the broadest category there. So fixed assets and consumer durables, as they put it. There are numbers going all the way back to 1925. The most recent is for 2018. And actually, since 2014, we've seen record average ages for these assets. And they keep going up. 2018, you were close to 22 years. That's how old stuff was on average. That was supposed to be around for a while. So the way Bank of America sees it, if indeed you get some kind of a pickup in capital spending, they're looking at areas like technology, healthcare, and industrial companies as potential beneficiaries down the line. So that's their investment focus out of this analysis. And if you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Yeah, we have a household that needs some new appliances.
Trust me, I've replaced almost all the appliances in my house over the years.
Yeah.
Really?
We've done some, but we have a few that it's time.
Replaced the washer and dryer twice.
And one is probably 20 years old, easily. It's just lasted, or if not longer. Yeah.
It feels like there's obviously a lot of energy efficiency that is very different from back in the day, right?
Yeah, that's fair. And I think some things last, and you can repair some things, but some things, it's just time.
And you think about just dealing with technology. You got to have a building that accommodates it. You got to have a house that accommodates it. I mean, I got an old house, and trying to figure out Wi-Fi in this place was a nightmare for years. It finally got it to work. But I'll tell you, that's the sort of thing that people are going to have to take into account going forward.
Yeah, and you also wonder if people are thinking about it a little bit more now. I mean, in this whole sort of like nesting environment that we're in, like you're
Totally.
looking around and like, is this the couch we want? Because I'm sitting on it a lot.
Exactly. We're doing a lot of focus on the outside space that we've got, because we assume we'll be spending a lot more time there.
Maybe look at some of your books there. No?
I'm shifting my laptop.
Too soon?
You can see the shutter instead.
Dave Wilson, what's on your playlist this weekend?
Good question. All I can tell you is that my town's got drive-in movies this summer.
Oh, nice.
And so they're going to show all 4 Toy Story movies. Tonight is the first one.
Nice. The first one's a classic.
Yeah.
The other one...
Wait, which one? What are you watching?
Toy Story.
Oh, it's a great movie.
Yeah, it is. I like the first one the best.
Yeah, it's just...
The other ones are like really sad in some ways. Like the first one, good, better. All right, well, enjoy Dave Wilson. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you on the other side of the weekend for your market insights, your stock. Oh, actually, no, we're going to talk to you in just a few minutes.
Jason,
why am I saying?
2 more hours at least.
I know.
2.5, actually.
Settling in.
Okay, let's go back to World and National News headlines. Back on over to Nancy Lyons in our D.C. studio. Hi, Nance.
Hey, Carol. New York is taking steps to reform police departments in the criminal justice system, with Governor Andrew Cuomo signing a 10-bill package today that was expedited by lawmakers following the death of George Floyd. Cuomo says cities and counties across the state have until April to make changes.
They must formulate a plan. They have to address the use of force by police officers, crowd management, community policing, bias awareness, de-escalation, restorative justice, community-based outreach. They have to have a transparent citizen complaint disposition procedure.
Those communities that fail to act on the measures will lose state funding. Former Trump aide Michael Flynn has asked a federal appeals court to stop Judge Emmett Sullivan from looking any further into the Justice Department's decision to drop the case against Flynn. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has more in today's arguments.
Flynn's case was backed by a Justice Department counsel and argued by his lawyer, Sidney Powell.
The judge has no authority to do anything further in the case. He also has no authority to go into the reasons behind the executive's determination to dismiss the case.
The appeals judges suggested that if they rule that Judge Sullivan is within his rights to re-examine the case, Powell can come back and appeal his final decision. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
As the country reopens, the government is taking steps to boost confidence in public transportation. It is distributing 96 million cloth face coverings to people riding on planes, trains, and public transportation systems. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our #1 priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Bloomberg and Eden Vet. TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man? What's up, my brother? Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 1928, New York Yankee Lou Gehrig hits 2 triples and 2 home runs to beat the White Sox 5-7.
See Lou Gehrig come out in the first inning, and he ends up hitting a 2-run home run. He ends up hitting 2 home runs in that game, and one of those Gehrig home runs actually was an inside the park home run. Bob Musil also steals home in the 6th inning. And
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunningham to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying to
standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Ready to talk brass tacks on what's happening in Major League Baseball? Turn to the Effectively Wild podcast from Fangraphs for daily statistics, analysis, and commentary.
One team will say, yeah, we're going to keep paying minor leaguers their stipend, and another team will say, we're going to extend the stipend through this month, and then another team will say, nope, we're cutting them off. So are extending it at least through August, which would basically be the end of the minor league regular season.
Search Effectively Wild on TuneIn to listen.
This is Mike Golick from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Trey Wingo, my son, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Wondering what to play next? Want to know what other TuneIn listeners are listening to right now? Head to the trending section under Browse to explore the most popular stations and podcasts on TuneIn today. Millions of listeners like you can't be wrong.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. We are on track for a losing week. S&P looking at a loss of roughly 5% on the week, but stocks are rebounding today from the biggest rout in 12 weeks. Dip buyers have emerged for companies that bore the brunt of yesterday's selling. S&P up now by 31, higher by 1%. The Dow up almost 400 points now, up by 1.6%. At the best level of the day, the Dow had been up 837 points, but right now a gain of 408. NASDAQ up 74. That is a gain of about 0.8%. 10-year down 11/30 seconds with a yield of 0.70%. Gold up 0.2%. 17.31 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.1%. 36.38 a barrel. So somewhat of a rebound after yesterday's selling. 12 minutes to go ahead of the close. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the Drive to the Close on this Friday. What a week it's been. What a day it's been. I mean, talk about a bit of a bipolar market, because we have been down as much as... We've been down about, 49 points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We've been up 837 points. Right now we're up 445 points. So we're seeing a bit of a swing here. And we see that on all of those major equity averages. Bruce Biddles is back with us, Chief Investment Strategist at Baird, on the phone from Sarasota, Florida. Bruce, what do you make of today's trade alone? We're talking about a 900-point swing. I mean, I've seen worse, but nonetheless, we've been kind of all over the place today.
Yeah, well, you had a huge day yesterday, down almost 2,000 Dow points. So you would expect that the following day, the volatility just wouldn't just dry up. So, but I would say this: we had a big opening on the morning, this morning, and typically in the down phase of the market after a big break, up mornings are problematic. So it wasn't too surprising that we gave all of that up and saw more. And then just under 300 on the S&P, we started to gain some traction, and it looks like we are right into the close.
And so put this in context of the last, month or so, Bruce, because this has been a market that has largely, and you'll see it on the cover if you haven't already of Bloomberg Business Week this week, this has been a market that has largely shrugged off what is clearly a pretty terrible economy, an economy in recession, talk of a depression, and yet, with the exception of yesterday, really grinding higher, and certainly net much higher than we were in March. How do you synthesize it all?
Well, you're right about it being surprising. We had a big drop in March, and then April, May, and the first part of June we covered almost all of that, if not all of it. And I think the markets, of course, are forward-looking, and they're looking for the economy to reopen here gradually into the second half of the year. There's also, some hopes of, a vaccine or some kind of treatment for the virus. And just as important, you've had massive monetary and fiscal policy thrown at both the stock market and the economy. So I think that accounts for a lot of the gains. Now, the question is the market forecasting more than the economy can deliver? And that might be a possibility here, because there's still some challenges ahead. We can certainly see that clearly in the news, that national civil unrest here. We still have elevated levels of unemployment, and a lot of jobs are simply not going to come back. And then you have the potential for election year volatility in the summertime, so the market may be looking ahead to that. And you have rising tensions with the U.S. and China on trade, so there's still a lot of headwinds here.
Yeah, headwinds. The list is long, man, and those are gusts. We're talking about knockdowns. Bruce Biddle, so what do you do in this market environment? Like I kidded with Jason on the sell-off yesterday. I'm like, now's the time to buy. It's 6% cheaper. And I don't mean to be so, not trying to sound careless in terms of how we look at the markets, but I do wonder when you look at this, what kind of moves do you actually take in terms of buying and selling on all of this?
Well, I think one of the things that the Fed accomplished with getting ahead of the curve, and by the way, Powell's been very different than we saw in the past in 2008 and 9 when the Fed was behind the curve. Every time the banks had a problem, they would come in with liquidity. But in the present example, Powell's been proactive, so that's been a big help. And I think what that's accomplished is it's given investors a lot of confidence despite the negative news on the economy and what's going on in the daily news. But the markets had this big run. We're up over 40% from the lows at the top before the week. So I suspect we're going to go into some sort of consolidation trading range here. Maybe 29.50, 31.50 would be the reward for the next maybe several weeks. But with that said, looking longer term, I think you want to focus on those sectors that are most closely aligned with the economy. Now, they had nice rallies in May and early June, and maybe they came a little bit too far, too fast, so some of those have pulled back. But what I'm talking about are the industrials, the financials, and the material sectors. And of course, I would like to gravitate more toward small caps and mid caps and maybe away from the larger caps, simply because the history shows that when you come out of recession, small caps typically take over the leadership, and that can go on for more than a year or more. Now, small caps have been oversold relative to large caps now for quite a while. And so they may be playing catch-up here, and I suspect that's where maybe the best gains will be in the second half of this year.
All right, Bruce Biddles, thank you so much. Really nice to catch up with you. Bruce Biddles, of course, Chief Investment Strategist for Baird, joining us on the phone from Sarasota. And, as we think about this week, and, Bruce providing us some good historical context there, Carol, we do think about a week where the market, it feels like from a sentiment and almost human perspective, started to think, okay, do we have this right? Do we not have this right? How are we feeling about this virus? How are we feeling about earnings? How are we feeling about all of it?
Well, as we said and kidded earlier in the week, wait a minute. This was a moment where we had to kind of slow down a little bit. We've had quite a bounce off the market low in late March. And so we've kind of gained back most of that lost ground, if not all of it, and, or most of it. And I think, here we are having conversations about a second wave. Dr. Ian Lustbader of NYU said, wait a minute, we're not even really done with the first wave. And we need to, whether or not how you classify it doesn't matter. We're still not out of the virus. Right. And that's the point. And we will not ultimately be out of the virus until you have treatments, a.k.a. a vaccine. And so we need to remember
because we don't even have therapeutics at this point. It's not even this sort of thing. It's like, oh, okay, well,
you've
if
got
most
the virus,
people get sick, we can do that. We've sort of lost track, I think it feels like, of the threat around antibody testing. We're not talking about as much anymore. I mean, candidly, part of it is because at a federal level, if I may be so bold, it feels like we sort of moved on. And you're hearing a lot of that message, and I worry about that. I do.
Yeah. And I do worry about it for individuals. We keep hearing about workers who are not going to, find jobs when they come back to all of this. And that's going to have a longer-term impact on the economy and make it tougher for us to get out of this hole. All right, stick around, folks. We've just got about 3.5 minutes left in today's trading session. We'll count you down to the closing bell. Take a look at some of the stocks on the move. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Business is like a puzzle.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man. Welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man?
C, what's up, my brother?
Fellas? Man, I'm good.
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Okay, here we go.
With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season. Like the Ringer NFL show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Trey Wingo here from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Mike Golic Jr. and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo and start listening today.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelleton. Up Friday, a losing week. Sound the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange as we wrap up trading on this Friday, June 12th. And it is on to the weekend with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ late session surge. Green on the screen here with the S&P ending the week at 3,041, up 39 points, up 1.3%. The Dow up 477 points. That was a gain of 1.9%. NASDAQ up 96 points, higher by about 1%. Now on the week, the S&P 500 index did drop by about 1.3%. Stocks rebounded from the biggest rout in 12 weeks as dip buyers emerged for companies that bore the brunt of Thursday's selling. Bruce Biddles is chief investment strategist at Baird. He was our guest moments ago, right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
I think the markets, of course, are forward-looking, and they're looking for the economy to reopen here gradually into the second half of the year. There's also, some hopes of, a vaccine or some kind of treatment for the virus. And just as important, you've had massive monetary and fiscal policy thrown at both the stock market and the economy. So I think that accounts for a lot of the gains.
Bottom line, an update for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ losing week. 10-year, the yield 0.70%. Gold up 0.2%, 17.31 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude, little changed, up 5 cents a barrel, up 0.1%, 36.39 on WTI. Airline stocks bounced back today among the high flyers, with UAL up by 19%. American Airlines Group up by 16.4%. Delta up 11.8%. Rounding out the big four, Southwest, ticker LUV, up by 9.3%. So again, recapping with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all rallying on this Friday. S&P up 39, a gain of 1.3%. The Dow up 1.9%. have been up as much as 3.3%. NASDAQ up 1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Wild thing, think you move me.
I got a few moves I know you'll like.
Shake it, blue thing, shake it, blue thing, yeah. Oh, come on, Timmy. Shake him. Not stir.
Just move on toward your destination.
I can make things move without touching them.
Shake it all over.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the market internals. Of course, Charlie giving you those closing numbers. We did finish with some decent gains, but man, it was not easy, and we were definitely off our highs of the day. But nonetheless, as Charlie mentioned, up almost 2% on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, a 1% gain in the NASDAQ, the S&P up about 1.3%. So what did that mean in terms of the breadth of the market? Overwhelmingly bullish. 407 names in the S&P 500 higher today. Still saw 98 names in the index were lower. For the week overall, Jason, we were down 5.6% on the Dow, a decline of 4.8% on the S&P, and the NASDAQ was down about 2.3%. And keep in mind, this is after we've seen several consecutive weeks. Let me just count it here. Maybe it wasn't consecutive weeks. We've been bouncing around here. But we've seen, certainly some dramatic gains in the S&P 500, certainly off those March lows. And, forgive me. Yeah, it's, let me think, 4 weeks in a row of gains. Sorry, I had the wrong screen up. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and the trade today, it feels like is sort of the story of the market right now, more than anything, more than yesterday in some ways. I mean, yesterday was dramatic, but today it feels like there was a lot of push and pull. And ultimately, and this goes to the story, I think somewhere Joel Weber is probably going, whew, we got that cover right in many ways. Because I think yesterday he was thinking,
he's at the heart of it. That was what was going on in the markets this week, and while, they talk about the rally, that was the heart of our discussions this week, that how could we continue to grind higher when you still have virus cases and they're climbing out west, how you still have a lot of questions. Just go back and everyone listen to the Jay Powell press conference. He's questioning the economic, outlook. Our Bloomberg economics team, the CEOs that we talk, and look at all the companies that continue to report earnings but say, you know what? We still don't have visibility.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you what the year's going to look like. Yeah, we may give you a little bit of a forecast in next quarter, maybe.
No, not really.
But maybe not even that. But certainly we're not going to tell you what's going to happen for the balance of the year.
And we've had, forgive me, and I want to correct myself, it was 3 consecutive weeks on the S&P 500 where we had substantial gains. So for us to say, well, wait a minute, let's try to make sense of this. It's like the perfect cover. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. So you should check that out and listen to the story. I mean, interesting sort of pivot in some ways or segue. Also listen to the story that's about Holland America, which is ultimately a brand of Carnival, because if you look at the market today, one of your biggest gainers in the travel or in the S&P is a bunch of travel names, including Carnival, Norwegian Cruise Lines, United Airlines. You heard Charlie talk a little bit about Delta and Southwest as well. So a lot of those names and listen, they have been beaten up pretty dramatically over the course of this, but you can almost tell the sentiment of the market at any given moment through those travel stocks. It's like, yay, everybody's going to travel, everything's going to be fine. And then the next day, no one's going to travel, sell.
United Airlines,
cutting back their staff.
That story about 10% of their management and administration staff, about 1,300 employees, have taken voluntary separation packages. Yeah. We saw this in the financial crisis. Companies took steps to reduce their workforce, and while investors sometimes see that as a good thing, right, because they're cutting back their ongoing long-term costs, it's kind of a one-time hit on the balance sheet. It's not ongoing. Investors sometimes like it, but you think about those workers now, they're out of work.
Just one name to mention. It's a privately held name, but there could be in play with a publicly traded company, well known to our audience, I dare say, Brooks Brothers. Did you see on the verge of bankruptcy? And Simon Property Group is among those looking at it. It's a nice story on the terminal. Lauren Coleman Lochner, our retail bankruptcy guru, as she is looking at that.
Can I say I was in there last fall, winter, buying some stuff for my husband, and it was quiet.
Yeah.
It was really quiet.
It's not very au courant.
No, but it's a great place for very,
nice for the staple, sort of staple stuff.
But you're absolutely right. What are you saying, Jason Kelly?
Nothing. Not saying
anything. Could hurt. John,
No.
do you hear what Jason just said?
I was there last year. too.
Right? Like if you need a great
tuck shirt, but I bought like a tuck shirt.
Exactly, like for a tuck shirt or even just a good standard quality, for a suit and stuff.
Yeah, don't tell.
Nice save,
don't tell
Kelly.
John.
Nice
Don't
save.
tell
Let's do
John.
the VIX. Just do the VIX, will you?
Volatility down about 12% today, closing at 35.96. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson! Dave Wilson. Back in the house.
I tried to send you off to your weekend, but you still have a stock to do. So
he was trying to get rid of you. I knew you were coming back.
Never.
What do you got for us, Dave?
Constellation Pharmaceuticals, that's what I got. It's a Cambridge, Massachusetts-based developer of treatments for cancer and other diseases. The company was founded in 2008 and went public in 2018. The ticker is CNST. Constellation shares were initially sold at $15 each. They dropped 23% on the first day of trading and stayed below the $15 price until last year's fourth quarter, when they soared more than sixfold. Constellation's surge resulted from favorable study results on a treatment for blood cancer called myelofibrosis. The company is pursuing a combination of an experimental drug with Jakafi, an existing medicine made by Incyte. Constellation put out additional data from the study today, and afterward, its shares became a battleground between bulls and bears. They initially climbed as much as 19%, then they gave up the entire gain and fell as much as 10%. The back and forth led to Constellation's biggest daily trading range of the year. The bulls barely carried the day as the stock rose 1.1%.
Dave Wilson, are you okay? Do you need to grab some water?
Fine now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Little water goes a long way.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you. Great stock. You always bring us some interesting names. Really, really love it. So drink some more water.
Okay.
And have a good weekend. All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Much more to come here on the second half of Bloomberg Business Week as we get toward the weekend. Carol, looking forward to the next hour, especially when we get to visit with
next couple of hours. I'm really looking forward to. There's some really deep conversations we're going to get into. In the meantime, let's go back to World and National News headlines. On over to Denise Pellegrini in our newsroom.
Yeah, all right, Jason and Carol. President Trump is giving us some hints now about what might be in his future if he doesn't win the 2020 presidential race. He talked about it on Fox News.
Certainly, if I don't win, I don't win. I mean, I go on and do other things. I think it would be a very sad thing for our country.
The president isn't saying what those other things might be, though, but he did question Joe Biden's mental state after the former VP said on The Daily Show that Trump was going to try to steal the election and might not leave the White House voluntarily. New coronavirus infections are jumping to a daily record high in Florida and Texas, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis attributing part of this increase to more testing.
We have widespread testing. We're doing 3 times as many tests a day now than we did at the end of March.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has just given its first press briefing in months, and Director Robert Redfield saying states and cities might have to resume lockdowns if cases surge too much. A new survey shows 20% of New Yorkers know someone who died of the virus. Protests against racial injustice are underway in some cities across the nation, including in Chicago, and protesters in Paris are being detained after trying to take a 19th century African funeral pole from a museum there. They told authorities they were liberating the artifact and wanted to return it to Africa. And ABC has just named Matt James its first black bachelor to lead the network's long-running dating competition show. Good Morning America says James founded an organization in New York City that finds creative ways to engage children from underserved areas. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Tech by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120.
People love a good story. They like it even better when that story is real.
Is this something strange in the numbers?
Paul Sweeney.
That seems like a big miss to me.
Bonnie Quinn.
New funds getting started in order to take advantage of what might be a moment.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
If Russia does throw this spanner in the works, what does it do to relations going forward?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
How important is that statement there?
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The market's in focus every business day. The Bloomberg Markets Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Bonnie Quinn.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
Market sell-off going global once again.
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
What's the thought on Apple here?
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
There's very, very disturbing dynamics at work.
Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Bonnie Quinn. Subscribe today at BloombergRadio.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or iTunes.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
You're living in a world built on science, politics.
If you have to drive, then it's more important than ever to watch your speed. As London starts to reopen, there are going to be more people on our streets. There'll be more people cycling, more people walking to work or to the shops. If you must drive, avoid the morning and evening peaks when the roads will be busier. We want the streets to be safe for everyone, all the time. So watch your speed. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Ready for a one-of-a-kind look at the NFL? On the PFF NFL podcast, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Munson interpret the unique stats of Pro Football Focus to analyze the league, uncover secret superstars, and discuss which teams to watch out for in the next Super Bowl.
Let's talk some football. Let's do it, Steve. All sorts of stuff. We're going to do most improved defenses around the NFL. Solomon Wilcots, our very own. He went into some detail over at PFF.com. Most improved defenses around the NFL.
Search PFF NFL on TuneIn to listen. With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunningham to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue, then throw the tissue away. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Disinfect surfaces, bottles, handles, knobs, and other places touched often. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 1928, New York Yankee Lou Gehrig hits 2 triples and 2 home runs to beat the White Sox 5-7.
See Lou Gehrig come out in the first inning, and he ends up hitting a 2-run home run.
He ends up hitting 2 home runs in that game, and one of those Garrett home runs actually was an inside the park home run. Bob Musil also steals home in the 6th inning. And
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A bankruptcy judge has approved Hertz Global Holdings' plan to raise cash by selling new shares that the car rental company concedes could end up being worthless. Hertz shares rallied on that speculation today, up by 37.3%. It was an up Friday, a down week. Now on the week, the S&P 500 index did fall by about 4.8%. Today, the S&P advanced 39 points, up 1.3%. The Dow up 477, up 1.9%. NASDAQ up 96. That was a gain of 1%. U.S. stocks rebounded from the biggest rout in 12 weeks as dip buyers emerged for companies that bore the brunt of Thursday's selling. Real estate, financial, and energy companies led gains in the S&P 500. 10-year yield 0.70%, down 12.30 seconds. Gold up 0.2%. 17.31 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.2%, 36.41 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, this week we saw more of the U.S. economy reopening, and we're talking about doing even more of that. Although we know it's not a straight path. Getting back to work, though, we know it is complicated. The magazine this week dives into that from several different angles. Here with more on that is Bloomberg Business Week Assistant Managing Editor Jim Ellis joining us on the phone from New Jersey. Jim, so glad to have you here with us. It is kind of complicated getting to work. How did you guys address this issue?
Well, we knew that as more and more jurisdictions opened up their own restrictions and said, okay, it's okay to bring people back in limited numbers to offices, a lot of companies would be dealing with this. So we wanted to try to do a group of stories that captured the different ways people were doing it, but also gave a lot of insight into the ways that companies in other countries that had already opened up, whether that was China, whether that was India and other parts of the world, and the experiences that they've had, which could be sort of illustrative for us how to do it and how not to do it.
What jumped out at you? What was the biggest surprise as you went through that, Jim? When you were reading through everything, what did you say? Oh, I did not expect to see that.
I guess the biggest surprise for me was sort of seeing companies recognizing that the short-term fix that everybody had addressed or adopted, which was send everybody home, turns out to be a significant part of at least the medium-term and possibly the long-term fix. A lot of people thought when this started, we're going home for a few weeks, and we're coming back, and things are going to be back to some sort of normal. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen for a long time, and that a lot of the work from home, a lot of the remote sort of experience in everything from sort of customer service to selling to education is going to be here for a very long time.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Jason and I have had this discussion with various guests about as people do start to come back to an office or go to a restaurant and what happens, or factories, right, Jim, and they get sick. Like, what's the liability? And are we, getting ready for a wave of, lawsuits against, companies and the like by employees?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very real issue for a lot of companies, particularly those that have a lot of employees who work in close proximity with one another. One of the things that, has grabbed a lot of headlines has been some of the workplaces that sort of didn't shut down, things like meatpacking plants and other places where people work very, very closely to one another, and we've seen some hot spots. And as a lot of people understand that that's a risk, but also this is America, and this is a fairly litigious society, and a lot of people think that if they are brought back into situations where they're put at risk, then they have a right to pursue their legally sort of what they think their liability is. Now that has put employers in an awkward position. So many of them want to get back to work, but they recognize that they have to do it in a somewhat measured, sort of way, right, so that they don't leave themselves open to suits. And also a lot of employees probably don't realize that they don't have the kind of flexibility that they might assume in being able to actually take an employer to court.
And, Jim, one of the other stories that really jumped out at me was this notion of even the sort of little traditions or the little things that we associate with workplaces, almost in a cliched way, oh, it's somebody's birthday, who's getting cupcakes, like that may be a thing of the past, at least for some amount of time. And even the way we meet with each other may change. Tell us about what you found there.
One of the stories we did was a company called HCL Technologies, which is a very large company, 150,000 employees. It's the third largest outsourcing company in India. They're the guys who do your, the programming that a lot of big banks use, a lot of, sort of mobile phone companies, and people who are doing a lot of the back office IT work for a lot of American companies and European companies. And they have, thousands of engineers sprinkled all over the world, but also huge numbers of them in India. And they are set up in a gigantic campus outside Mumbai, and people are used to doing things in very large groups. I mean, they have people who live together, they have company buses, they have gigantic cafeterias, and people would have celebrations together, they have yoga classes, they have all these things. All that's being rethought now, because you can't suddenly have large numbers of people, 60 people pressed together on a bus. Little things like that had to go away. Little things like eating together, which used to be, around large tables and sharing food. Now all the tables are singles, and people are spread way apart from one another. The company cafeteria has shut down most of the offerings that it has. I mean, everything is about preserving distance and making sure that, people are not so close to one another that it's going to result in some sort of a shutdown again.
Right, and there's another third story that talks about drug reps. I mean, their world has certainly been turned upside down again in terms of what's going on. Jim, hold on a second. We've got to do a little bit of news, and then we're going to come back and we want to continue our conversation with you. Bloomberg Business Week Assistant Managing Editor Jim Ellis is with us, and we will continue because, as we know, Jason, we have these conversations. We talk with folks from all different types of industries. Getting back, it's complicated. There are a lot of moving parts, and you want to make sure you do it safely, but there's a lot of concerns among workers about how you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just sort of like how the day-to-day changes, too. You mentioned the pharmaceutical reps, and I was having this conversation over Zoom with someone after the show last night. It's fascinating. There's both a distance and an intimacy. It's very strange how all this is working. So we're going to continue the conversation with Jim Ellis as well about some of his coverage in just a second.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Investors took back some of the ground they lost in the worst rout since mid-March, with gains of 1% to almost 2% across the averages. The Dow up 477, the Nasdaq 96, the S&P 39. Investors, however, had been on track to go higher until worries about another wave of the coronavirus clipped those gains. The World Health Organization says the risk of a second wave is present. The CDC said states and cities might have to lock down again if cases surge dramatically. The U.S. Transportation Department is hoping to boost public confidence in transportation, public and otherwise. It'll provide nearly 87 million masks to airports and about 9.5 million to transit agencies and Amtrak. And two key senators are working to make sure companies like Boeing can't influence the way the FAA certifies new planes for flight. According to Reuters, it's been revealed as a potential problem in the original certification of the 737 MAX. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Market upheavals.
The narrative is driven by uncertainty about the virus.
Political reversals.
It's not clear that some of the Republicans up on the Hill are agreed with the Republican White House.
Economic shifts.
The macro clearly being driven by the coronavirus outbreak.
Everything seems to be in motion.
Will it also mean a global recession in your view now?
But here, you're on solid ground.
Looking forward to guiding you through all of this.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The world's financial decision makers.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunningham to Fiala, he scores!
For a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic game replays to start listening.
Who says you can't have a laugh while getting serious about America's pastime? On the daily podcast Locked On MLB, comedian and baseball fanatic Paul Francis Sullivan talks about each team, each pennant race, and everything else in the game, from rule changes and controversies to baseball cards and stadium food.
For those of you who are not familiar with me or the old show, I love to obsess over baseball. I'm talking baseball over the Super Bowl. We had a TV showing the division series during my wedding.
Search Locked On MLB on TuneIn to listen today.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Okay, here we go.
With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season. Like the Ringer NFL show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
As the science and medical world continues to learn more about COVID-19, we're all learning how to best live with it. Because the news is always changing, TuneIn helps you make sure you're getting the latest information on the pandemic with live streams of CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and more. Plus, evidence-driven podcasts like Coronavirus, Fact versus Fiction, and Podcast 19 for the latest stories and reports. Search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day. On this day in 1928, New York Yankee Lou Gehrig hits 2 triples and 2 home runs to beat the White Sox 5-7.
See Lou Gehrig come out in the first inning, and he ends up hitting a 2-run home run. He ends up hitting 2 home runs in that game, and one of those Gehrig home runs actually was an inside the park home run. Bob Musil also steals home in the 6th inning. And
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, search sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
30 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Jim Ellis, our colleague from Bloomberg Business Week, frequent guest on our weekend show. We miss having him at our table around the office. So, and here to catch up with him on a little more personal basis because he participated in something yesterday for our newsroom that was tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk to him about that. And I felt like I learned a lot, and I'm ready to learn some more. So we'll get into that in just a moment. Let's get back to your top business story, some news after the closing bell. Hey, Charlie Powell.
Well, hello there. I do want to begin with some headlines from Atlanta. Fed President Raphael Bostic, who says he shares the outrage over police brutality, says the United States has a moral and economic imperative to end racism. His comments came in an essay posted online. It was an up day, a losing week, but an up Friday with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all advancing today. S&P 500 index climbing 39 points, up 1.3%, ending the week at 3,041. Stocks rebounding with the Dow up 877 points today. That was a gain of 1.9%. NASDAQ up 96, higher by 1%. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all making up some of yesterday's brutal sell-off. In fact, that was the biggest rout in 12 weeks. Dip buyers emerging for companies that bore the brunt of yesterday's selling. As for the earnings backdrop, Ben Laidler is CEO of Tower Hudson Research. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television.
Let's not lose sight of the fundamentals here. Earnings are, at least for 50% of the index, are incredibly depressed and are beginning to move back here. Earnings for the other 50%, I think, are almost bulletproof. And valuations, I actually don't think they're as expensive as people think. I mean, PE is the outlier. Everything else, I think, looks a lot more reasonable.
Caterpillar's machinery sales dropped by the most in 10 years last month in a sign of a deepening slump in its Americas business, where the company has extended plant shutdowns. Caterpillar up today by 1.3%. Morgan Stanley cut Tesla to underweight from equal weight, saying the rally that saw the stock break above $1,000 this week does not properly reflect emerging risks. A Tesla back below $1,000 at $935, tumbling today by 3.7%. And a bankruptcy judge approved Hertz Global Holdings' plan to raise cash by selling new shares that the car rental company concedes could end up being worthless. Hertz did rally today by 37.3%. 10-year yield 0.71%. Gold up 0.2%, $17.31 the ounce. Again, West Texas Intermediate crude 36.46 a barrel, up 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
It is indeed. All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Still with us is Bloomberg Business Week Assistant Managing Editor Jim Ellis, joining us on the phone from New Jersey. And Jim, Jason and I really wanted to spend some time with you to talk about the last couple of weeks and what I really feel like is years and years of racism in America. And we know we as a news organization are talking a lot about this. What can be done better? How do we make changes so we get rid of the inequalities that exist and make sure we expose them as they need to be? You were part of an event, a virtual event that we did at Bloomberg yesterday. And I have to say, it really stuck with me. And I know with Jason and all of us who were watching and listening to you. I mean, how can we do things better, and how can we make sure that change comes about?
I think that one of the things that one of the reasons that so many of us in all businesses, but particularly at Bloomberg, have been so interested in this topic and sort of what's happening now is because it seems that we're at some sort of an inflection point, which sort of I would not have expected, that all of a sudden an event has happened that is so horrendous to so many people that it's forcing America to sort of take a look at itself, and it's forcing a lot of American businesses to sort of stand up and say that we have certain feelings about equity in in America, equity in our marketplaces, and equity within our own companies. That's been surprising, and I think that what we're seeing is that a lot of companies don't want to be on the wrong side of this because there are so many, not just customers that they have to worry about, but also so many employees. One of the things we've talked a lot about in the last 5 years, 7 years, is how companies that recruit people have discovered that more and more younger employees care about things like social justice, about LGBT rights, about sort of treating women right in the